How you doing?
You ready for your beating?
I'm ready for issue a meeting. All right. What I'd like to know, before we even start off with the game, tell me 3 words to describe your tenure as Prime Minister thus far.
Well, I think what the public sees is stability, intensity. It's been a very intense year. And my own personal description of what we have been able to do is focus. We've been very focused.
And
So let me start.
Sure. Wasting no time. Focus. Tell me a little bit about the focus. Has there been some issues more pressing than others that has, like, basically kind of demanded more focus and more attention than others?
Well, focus means that what you have committed to do, you actually do. So we have been focused on economic growth and creating jobs. And we are seeing great results in job creation. We've seen moderate results in economic growth. But there are other things which have competed for our attention. And that is obviously the situation with crime and violence in the country.
And I mean, speaking of the situation with crime and violence in the country, not to jump right into it, but I mean, there's been obviously, you know, a big upheaval with what's been happening recently with the whole situation with the women and the taxis and all that kind of stuff. Is there any, I mean, it's a very difficult, I'm a lay person, I don't really know like the technical terms, but is there any way like to actually combat these types of crimes that is so kind of like, you know what I mean, almost ambiguous in its very nature?
Clear, Sanjay, the old methods of crime fighting will not work. Unfortunately, there are those in the public who hold the view that we need tough measures. What exactly are tough measures? We know that tough measures have resulted in Jamaica's reputation being damaged in some ways, but more than that, the collateral damage, the loss of innocent lives. Jamaica can't go down that path again. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to go back in that direction.
And you're confident that we have the necessary tools to fully execute this sophisticated approach?
I think we are, and that's part, it's a very good question, because a part of the sophisticated approach is to actually build out the capacity. So we need more personnel in our security forces. We need more equipment and assets, and that is what we've been doing. We have made the budgetary allocations to start that process of building capacity. I see you're making some very aggressive moves there.
You made a nice little comeback though. I mean, it kind of wasted my move, but...
I know you're making some very aggressive moves, but let's see how it goes.
So I was at the launch yesterday. I ran into Senator Matthew Samuda, and I mentioned that we'd be having this interview today, and he said he has a question for you. So I told him, be careful what you're asking her, because I'm going to make the Prime Minister know that this question is coming from you. So he said, sure. He said, ask him that as the minister with the most vibrant dance hall constituency, how do you feel about having a 4 a.m., being the first 4 a.m. lock-off zone?
That's a very good question. About 4 years ago, I decided to support what I saw as an emerging business, that is the entertainment business in my constituency. And so we created a hip strip on Olympic Way. And almost every day of the week there is a different dance. There's always a challenge with the existing law. I think inevitably, eventually, we will have to make entertainment zones. If you touch it, you move it. Right?
If I take my hand off of it, I move it. And that's an interesting concept actually, because I've never heard of like a hip strip in that vicinity, but it makes total and complete sense. Being somebody who's heavily entrenched in the dancehall community myself, I see how many people come from overseas and come to Kingston with the main purpose of experiencing this dancehall culture.
So it's an experience.
It is.
And it is how government supports the experience. People come to experience the dancehall culture. And, dancehall culture, there is a view that there is violence in it. I'm reading an article recently in the UK where their local governments have taken a position that they're not giving permits for anything having to do with dancehall. we have to change that. And we have to, I have been saying that the music has to self-regulate. The people who are in the industry need to realize that they're in a business. And the government recognizes dancehall as a major potential economic driver for some communities, but they need to clean up their act.
And let me ask you this question, because I've always felt like one of the major hindrances to the industry in Jamaica is that it's really not much of an industry. So when you say things like clean up their act, in what specifically would you suggest, or what would you be referring to?
You know, for me, I have an interest in ensuring that Jamaica is not portrayed as a violent country. And I think there is too much acceptance and promotion of the use of violence in dancehall. It's way better than it was before, when there was open promotion of a gun culture. But there's still too much violence being portrayed and used within the culture.
And when you speak of like root causes, like do you really think that like trying to nip it from the branch of, let's say, music and dancehall, that really kind of gets to the root cause of what the
It doesn't, and I'm not blaming dancehall for violence.
Yeah, I get that.
I'm blaming music for violence. I mean, you know, the dancehall is an art form, and the artist, whether it's a musician, a sculptor, or a painter, usually tries to reflect reality. But art is not always a reflection of reality. In fact, the power of art is to lift men, and when I use the term men, to lift humankind to a higher level of aspirations, of dreams, of what we could be. All right, so we want to dominate. War start. All right. Oh, even, still even. Everything here is still even. See if I move. All right, we can start.
Shouldn't grade school and secondary education be free to all?
It is.
Oh, it is?
It is. The law in Jamaica, the constitutional amendment, which was passed, done in our Charter of Rights, is that pre-primary education and primary education should be free, and that's the law. And we have extended that up to secondary school. The question is, can people afford the non-tuition costs to get into school? And that has always been the case. You know, the lunch money, the bus fare, the uniforms. But government has a duty and obligation to ensure that all Jamaicans can enter school free of cost.
And lastly, Mr. Prime Minister, what's the most intense thing about being the youngest Prime Minister of Jamaica?
The job is intense. There is no dull moment. And you're always on call as Prime Minister. I think I may have imposed upon myself a higher standard in terms of being available, being accessible, participating, and taking on an actual ministry. So that is intense.
It definitely is.
Well, this looks like a draw.
Checkmate.
Oh, really?
No, it's definitely not a draw. Listen.
It's even.
I'm an honest person. I'm a very honest person. I run off my mouth a whole heap. Positionally, you're definitely in the lead.
Positionally, I'm advanced.
Positionally, you're definitely in the lead.
Yeah, but it's an even game. So you're a good player.
You are too. Good thanks.
It's good.
Nice.